let me ask you something very direct. Have you ever heard just one sentence, one offhand remark, and felt completely shattered inside? Has a single critical comment ever echoed in your head for hours, even days, haunting you, making you question your worth, your competence, even your identity? This experience is far more common than we like to admit. Criticism doesn't just sting. For many, it cuts straight to the core. And this is not just a matter of sensitivity. There are real psychological, neurological, and emotional reasons why criticism affects us so deeply. And more importantly, there are ways to understand it, navigate it, and even grow through it. In this lecture, I want to take you on a journey through the brain, through childhood, through relationships and identity. We will explore why criticism hurts so intensely and, step by step, how to build a mindset that can absorb it, learn from it, and even transform because of it. You may not know this, but your brain processes social rejection with the same neural circuitry it uses for physical pain. Let that sink in. A critical remark from your boss, a sarcastic jab from a friend, even a cold glance from someone you admire, these activate the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region involved when you burn your hand or stub your toe. This isn't metaphorical, it's neurological. In 2003, Naomi Eisenberger and colleagues at UCLA demonstrated that social exclusion triggers our pain system. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes perfect sense. For thousands of years, to be excluded from the group meant death. Our ancestors depended on belonging for food, protection, and survival. So, our nervous system evolved to treat disapproval as a danger signal. That's why, even today, when someone says something critical, especially if it touches something we're insecure about, our body goes into high alert. Heart rate rises, muscles tense, thoughts race. Our reaction is not just emotional, it's primal. Understanding this changes everything. Criticism is not just about opinion, it's about perceived safety. And when we start to see that, we begin to take back the power to respond consciously instead of reacting instinctively. But there's another layer beneath the neurobiology, a deeper one, and it lives in the voice inside your head, the one that says, after receiving criticism, "See, I told you. You're not good enough. You never were." This inner critic is not born in adulthood. It is shaped in childhood. It's the accumulation of subtle and not so subtle messages we received growing up. Maybe you had a teacher who constantly compared you to others, a parent who rarely praised but quickly corrected, or peers who mocked instead of supported. Over time, these external voices become internal beliefs. Now, when someone criticizes you, you don't just hear them. You hear a chorus of every disapproving voice from your past. You don't just feel hurt in the present. You feel humiliated as the child who was never enough. This is why criticism can feel so much bigger than the actual words. It doesn't just challenge your actions, it reactivates unresolved shame.
Recognizing this is not about blaming the past. It's about naming the mechanism. Because once you see that your reaction to criticism is amplified by old wounds, you stop fighting the person in front of you and start healing the pain behind you.
Let us pause for a moment and make a crucial distinction, one that often gets overlooked in the emotional whirlwind of feedback. Not all criticism is created equal, and not all criticism wounds us in the same way. On one side, we have what we might call constructive criticism. This is the kind of feedback that is focused, specific, and anchored in behavior rather than personality. Constructive criticism says, "What you did here was unclear. Here's how it could be stronger." It maintains a boundary between the person and their performance. It speaks to improvement, not to identity. It gives you direction without stripping you of your dignity. Then there is destructive criticism. This one is more subtle and more dangerous. It tends to be vague, generalized, and emotionally charged. It sounds like, "You always do this wrong. You're just not cut out for this." It doesn't offer solutions. It only wounds. It doesn't separate your behavior from your being. And worst of all, it often carries the silent message, You're not good enough, and you never will be. But here's the deeper truth. The impact of criticism is not just about what is said. It is profoundly shaped by who says it, how it is said, and the context in which it lands. A suggestion from someone you admire can feel like a gentle push toward growth. The same words from someone you fear or mistrust can feel like a personal attack. And even more, the state you're in matters too. If you're already anxious, exhausted, or doubting yourself, even mild feedback can sound like condemnation. Criticism does not fall on a blank canvas. It lands on a landscape shaped by history, emotion, and vulnerability. So before we talk about how to handle criticism, we must first recognize its forms. Because not everything that hurts is harmful, and not everything that is harsh is helpful. Discernment is the first step toward mastery. Now let us look at what happens in the moment, when criticism hits us like a wave. You've just received a comment. It might have been subtle or sharp, justified or unfair. But before your rational mind even has time to evaluate it, your body and your emotions have already responded. You tense up, your stomach drops, maybe you feel a flush of heat in your face, maybe your hands clench, perhaps your chest tightens. What you are experiencing is not weakness. It is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. Your body is entering fight, flight, or freeze. And from that survival state, we develop psychological defenses. These are automatic, unconscious reactions meant to protect us from emotional pain. Some people go into fight mode. They lash out, become defensive, argue back, blame the critic instead of looking inward. Others flee, not physically, but emotionally. They withdraw, shut down, avoid eye contact, stop speaking, maybe even ghost the person entirely. And then there's the freeze response, the paralysis of shame. You smile, nod, pretend you're fine, but inside you're collapsing. Your mind spins, but you can't find the words. You feel exposed, like a child caught doing something wrong. And perhaps worst of all, you believe that what was said must be true. Let me be clear, these reactions are understandable. They are not signs of immaturity or failure. They are signs of a nervous system doing its best to keep you safe. But while they are natural, they are not always helpful, because they keep us stuck in reactivity instead of moving toward reflection. Here's the key shift. When criticism arises, can you learn to pause? Can you notice your impulse and not act on it? That moment of pause is the beginning of freedom. It's the moment you stop being driven by old instincts and start responding with new awareness. Maturity is not the absence of pain in the face of criticism. It is the presence of choice in how we deal with it. Now we arrive at one of the most decisive factors in how we process criticism: the architecture of your self-esteem. The strength or fragility of your inner foundation determines how you metabolize external feedback. Imagine two people receiving the same piece of critical feedback. Your presentation was disorganized. One hears it, takes a breath, and thinks, "That's fair, I can work on that." The other collapses inward, replaying it 100 times, spiraling into, "I'm so stupid. I never get this right. Why do I even try? What's the difference?" It's not intelligence. It's not experience. It's self-worth. You see, if your sense of value is stable, if you believe deep down that your worth is not conditional, then criticism can be uncomfortable, even painful, but it will not dismantle you. It might sting, but it won't stick to your soul. But if your self-worth is contingent, meaning it depends on your performance, approval, success, or how others see you, then criticism feels like identity death. It's not just a comment on your work, it becomes a judgment on your existence. This is especially true for those who grew up in environments where love or attention was earned, not given. When affection depended on achievement or approval was only given in exchange for obedience, a person learns, "I am only valuable if I perform." And when that performance is criticized, the entire system crumbles. And here's the paradox. People with fragile self-esteem often work harder, push further, achieve more, because they are trying to earn the feeling of being enough. But because their inner critic is never satisfied, no success is ever safe, and no criticism is ever small. If you want to build resilience to criticism, you must build unconditional self-worth. You must learn to say, I am valuable, even when I fail. I am worthy of respect, even when I fall short. I can be flawed and still be enough. That, my friends, is not self-help fluff. That is psychological necessity. Let us now enter the most critical moment, the moment right after the criticism lands, but before we respond. This is the narrow passage through which everything must pass, and the quality of our inner life, Hank de van Ab, was we're in dieser Zwischenzeit tun. For most of us, the reaction is automatic, fast, almost mechanical. We defend, deflect, deny, diminish. We react before we reflect. But this moment, this microsecond between trigger and response, is where freedom begins. Viktor Frankl, the great psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote one of the most powerful sentences in modern psychology. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This space, however, is not found. It must be created. Created through self-awareness, through emotional literacy, through the courage to tolerate discomfort without escaping it. So how do we do this? It begins with the art of noticing. When you hear criticism, pay attention not just to the words, but to your body, your breath, your emotion. Say to yourself, without judgment, I feel heat in my chest. My fists are clenched. My thoughts are racing. This inner observation interrupts the reflex. It gives your prefrontal cortex, a part of your brain responsible for rational thought, time to come back online. Next, you ask yourself, what exactly was said? And what meaning am I attaching to it? You begin to separate the event from your interpretation. Because more often than not, what hurts is not the criticism itself, but the story you tell yourself about what it means. And that is the beginning of mastery. The ability to slow down your reaction, to make space for thought, to ask a question instead of throw a punch. That's not weakness. That's psychological sovereignty. Theory without tools is philosophy. So let me now offer you several practices, concrete, grounded tools, to strengthen your resilience in the face of criticism. First, journaling. Keep a criticism log. Not to obsess, but to observe. What triggered you? Who said it? What emotion did it evoke? What was your reaction? Over time, you will begin to see patterns, familiar wounds, repeated stories, habitual responses. And once you see the pattern, you are no longer trapped by it. Second, practice self-affirmation. After receiving hard feedback, say to yourself, not as a trick, but as a truth, I am still worthy, I am still learning, I am allowed to make mistakes. The inner critic thrives in silence. Counter it with conscious, compassionate words. Third, surround yourself with people who can give feedback with care, not flattery, not aggression, but honesty wrapped in empathy. People who love you enough to tell you the truth and wise enough to speak it with skill. Fourth, separate failure from identity. If you confuse I failed with I am a failure, every piece of criticism becomes existential. But if you anchor yourself in an unconditional sense of worth, you will begin to see criticism not as condemnation, but as calibration. And finally, engage in situations where you invite feedback, not to please, but to grow. Growth does not happen in the comfort zone. It happens in the presence of challenge, supported by self-respect.